guitar player. Over here.
Our purpose is to sponsor activities that will educate the campus community. We are dedicated to providing an enriching experience that will demonstrate the goal and purpose of Alpha in our individual organizations. Bobby Seale is the last surviving architect of one of the most important social change movements in American and African American history. He is the founding chairman and was the national organizer of the Black Panther Party. Mr. Seale currently serves as the community liaison for the Department of African and African American Studies at Temple University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. At this time, on behalf of the African Latino Fraternal Alliance, I present Mr. Bobby Seale.
Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me here to Long Island University CW Post. I'm trying to remember that I ever speak at Long Island University CW Post. You know, I've spoke probably at more than 3,000 colleges. I think it's only about 3,500 colleges in the United States of America. But since 1967, in the middle of the 60s, approximately a year after we started the Black Panther Party, being lecturing around the country and trying to give a message, give an understanding, reflect upon some history. I've been trying to continue to make that contribution even in these last 15, 20 years that I've been living in Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. But again, here it is, the designated year 1999. And there's a lot of things yet to be done. Myself, I'm still networked with over 1,000 former Black Panther Party members throughout the United States of America, including people like Kathleen Cleaver. Even Angela Davis at one point was in the Black Panther Party for about 8 to 9 months. You've heard recently that Brother Eldridge Cleaver, May 1st, died. He died behind medical complications for taking 2 different medications, just prescribed by 2 different doctors. He had a toxic problem there. And he died. He was the Minister of Information of the Black Panther Party, in case you didn't know that. Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, formerly prominent probably 3-4 years before. Myself, Huey P. Newton, and others in the Black Panther Party came along. Kwame Ture was also a member of the Black Panther Party for approximately a year and 3 or 4 months as the Prime Minister of the Black Panther Party. He died this year too. I have other white left radical buddies like Jerry Rubin, who died a few years ago. Abby Hoffman, who's died. And maybe 9 or 10 former old Black Panther Party members since the 60s who have died behind various kind of medical and complication problems. I'm 62 years of age. I'm still hanging on. I don't intend to die soon. My grandmother, my great-grandmother, Grandma Winnie, lived to be 108. My grandmother on my mother's side lived to be 94. My mother right now is getting ready to turn 92 March the 3rd. My father did die at 84. And I'm going to hang in here. You know, my son, the one who's just getting ready to finish medical school, is graduating this year, tells everybody Dad's too mean to die. Dad's still mad at the races. He refused to die. Anyway, it's good to be here. Let me reflect upon, for tonight, some of the real authentic history of the Black Panther Party. A lot of people who really do not know and do not understand that. A lot of people who are still running around propagating the insidious notion that the Black Panther Party was a black militant hate group. That phrase, wait a minute, that phrase, black militant hate group, came from the counterintelligence program of the FBI. They were the ones who sent out the press releases. They were the ones who got the politicians and others to come around and denounce and stereotype the Black Panther Party. To say that we were a black militant hate group. I mean, people like Ronald Reagan, top politician at the time, governor of California when the Black Panther Party evolved, 1966, 67, 68, 69. Ronald Reagan called us a bunch of hoodlums and thugs. Mayor Daley of Chicago, Illinois, that major city, got up on national television and told the biggest lie in the world that the only reason that the Black Panthers had guns was to come into the white community and shoot and kill white people. And most white people believed it. The people that didn't believe it was the white left radical buddies and friends of ours in the 1960s, protested up and down the streets, who began to get their own heads beat. These were the people we were in coalition with. At the time they said this, we had these working face-to-face coalitions with all progressive white left radical organizations and even media, middle-of-the-road people who protest. We had coalitions with all the Latino organizational frameworks in this country, the Brown Berets, Cesar Chavez Farm Labor Movement, the Young Lords, the Young Puerto Rican brothers and sisters from Chicago all the way to Philadelphia and up and down the East Coast who organized grassroots community organizing, designed on the same basic lines of where the Black Panther Party was coming from. But I'm just saying, we had these working coalitions. And when I say working coalitions, I'm not talking about you write something in support of me, I write something in support of you. I'm talking about face-to-face, everyday working coalitions, putting up programs, working together, sometimes printing one group's newspaper on the back upside down and the other's upside down on our same newspaper. That's what you call a working face-to-face coalition. Coalition politics was one of the most profound characteristics in the history of the Black Panther Party that nobody understands. Why? Because the old history, establishment media, establishment politicians attempted to and did do a halfway significant job of stereotyping what we were about. Why the Black Panther Party even came about, most people don't know. There was a recent film made called Panther. This film was a fiction piece written by Melvin Van Peebles. Mario Van Peebles was his son who directed it. I've never met Mario Van Peebles, but I have met his father, Melvin Van Peebles. I knew his father very well. Anyway, what I'm trying to give you another little piece of quick history here concerning that film. A lot of people think that film represents the history of the Black Panther Party. Not true. 90% of what is portrayed on the screen in the film Panther, when you see it, and I want you to see it, 90% of what's portrayed on the screen is pure fiction that has absolutely nothing to do with the real true history of the Black Panther Party's history in the United States of America. It has nothing to do with it. Melvin Van Peebles didn't put that film out. Let me give you some history on that. Before Melvin Van Peebles ran to England to Polygram Entertainment Company to get his first $5.5 million to begin to produce his cheap fiction, there was already a contract signed for a $27.5 million Warner Brothers Pictures contract with John Singleton already contracted and paid his first option payment of $200,000 to direct a major feature film drama on the real, true, authentic history of the Black Panther Party. This book here sees the time. I wrote this book while in jail, not prison. I've never been to prison. I've only been in jail for 22 months without bail, but I won all my political cases. I wrote this book. This was the central piece of literary property that was going to be used for that major Warner Brothers production. David Hilliard's new book was going to be used too, This Side of Glory. Kathleen Cleaver had been basically contracted. I had been contracted. We had some 20-some-odd authentic, real former Black Panther Party members contracted, all the way down to $50,000, $60,000, and $65,000. They picked up $10,000, $15,000, and $20,000 option payments when they signed the contract to say they would work on this film. That had already been done in the year of 1992. Melvin Van Peebles didn't start on his so-called Panther film until 1993. When you get option payments, for an 18-month period or a 21-month period. In other words, if they haven't started the principal photography within 18 months or 21 months, depending on what's written in your contract, then you get a second payment for another 18 to 21 months until you get the film finished. Melvin Van Peebles ran to England, got himself $5 million or so, came back to America from 2 or 3 other production companies, and got himself $2 more million, ran out and shot in film a cheap production that has nothing to do with our real history. People would say, well, how would he shoot a film like that and didn't consult you guys? He couldn't consult us. Why? Because we were already contracted with the Warner Brothers production. You cannot turn around and work on another production. You would be breaching your contract. Melvin Van Peebles in the movie business, he knew that. So he wasn't even concerned with consulting us. Even the 2 major film critics, what's their name, Siskel and Hubert, whatever the guys, put thumbs down. And what they said is that Melvin Van Peebles did not even know the history of the Black Panther Party. It says Melvin Van Peebles didn't go to people like Bobby Seale or consult, obviously, no real Black Panther Party members who really created the Black Panther Party. Melvin Van Peebles, they said, could have went to the Library of Congress, sit down, and read all the FBI counterintelligence program documents, and he would have learned more authentic history from that than he would have done by writing some cheap fiction. And they was right. USA Today calls me up, May 3rd, 1995, a little bit before, 2 days before May 3rd, 1995, to ask me had I saw this film Panther. I said, yes, I did. I says, there was a private showing here a week ago. I says, I dressed up, put some shades on and a hat, told my lawyer to come go with me. We got 2 free tickets from a local black newspaper, because it was a free showing for the film, and I said, I went to see that film. I said, I did not want to let the people know who was on the stage introduce the film, that I was even in the audience. And he says, well, what happened? I says, as far as I'm concerned, 90% of that film, I told this reporter from USA Today, 90% of that film that's portrayed in the screen represent a bunch of cheap fiction. Oh, no. I mean, they have composites and poetic license. I says, no. It's tantamount to poetic lies, because it does not represent the true history of the Black Panther Party. So this young reporter says, well, how do you think you can sit up and say that? I said, what do you mean how I can say that? I created the Black Panther Party. I said, I know the names and the characters of everybody, the very beginning people. I know it. I'm the one that took the money out of my pocket, went up, got out Black Panther Party office at 5624 Grove Street. I'm the one that painted the sign up on the window that said the Black Panther Party for self-defense. I'm the one who worked in the War on Poverty office where me and Huey sit down and wrote the 10-point platform and program of the Black Panther Party 3 blocks from my house, around the corner from Merritt College where I went to college. Well, I still think, I says, no, you can't run around here telling me what I can't say about the history of the Black Panther Party. So I really got funky with him. I said, when you was running up and down your daddy's testicle sack, I was kicking him out. I just told him straight up. So that's a very close piece of history to me, not so much because, you have to understand something. 28 brothers and sisters died in the Black Panther Party. The year of 1968, led by J. Edgar Hoover and the counterintelligence program and the FBI operations to try to distort and attack us, particularly in that year, that's when they attacked every Black Panther Party office in the United States of America. This is when our organization had grown. By January 1969, we hit 5,000 plus active, full-time Black Panther Party membership. Plus, we had created an extension organization of the Black Panther Party called the National Committee to Combat Fascism, which included all the white left radicals. Whether you was black, white, blue, red, green, yellow, polka dot, you could work with this organizational framework. There was a broad coalition extension of the Black Panther Party. They attacked every Black Panther Party office. By the end of 1969, there was 28 Black Panther Party members dead and 14 policemen dead. I still got probably 8 Black Panther Party political prisoners in prison today who can never get out of prison. Like Romaine Fitzgerald's in San Quentin, or the California prison system right now. He and another Black Panther Party member who got killed. Some policemen started harassing them, and they got into a shootout in Los Angeles, California. 2 cops were dead. And when they finally caught up with Romaine Fitzgerald a week or so later, he still had the same gun that the ballistics matched. They put him on death row. And then, of course, following that shootout, the death penalty was killed by the United States Supreme Court. Then it was brought back. So he's still in prison for life. Eddie Conway Marshall, right now, is in prison for 28 years in the state of Maryland with a racist government. Mumia Abu-Jamal was a young man in the Black Panther Party, but the Black Panther Party was over. But Mumia Abu-Jamal in the state of Pennsylvania, everybody, you got to look at that situation. Mumia Abu-Jamal did not receive a fair trial. And I don't just say that emotionally. You need to investigate the facts surrounding the case, and people need to learn to support and stand up, if for no other reason, for the right to have a fair trial in the United States of America. Because when I came along, we, Black Panther Party, black people, white people, red people, green people, blue people, whoever. I mean, I ain't never forgotten. I mean, I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of people on one level or another, in one various protest kind or another, stood up and demanded free Bobby Seale, demanded free Angela Davis, demanded free Huey Newton, demanded free all political prisoners in the United States. We did that. People did that. People came out. People came forth. And not just students in the streets. I'm talking about some of the same movie stars, the same type of actors you see, like Mike Farrell and others who stand up with me. You got to connect with that. Because 9 times out of 10, what really possibly happened from the evidence that I've talked about with Leonard Weinglass, who is Mumia Abu-Jamal's lawyer. Now, from everything I can gather, possibly, even if you took all the politics out of it and just went down by the real law of it, it was probably, and I'm speculating, a 3rd-degree voluntary manslaughter that he may not have even done, but somebody else may have done, but he become caught up in the possibility of being associated with a 3rd-degree voluntary manslaughter. Historically, when we said free Huey Newton, we went out. We went and got the witnesses. We became the real street community investigators, along with a couple of other professionals. And we got all the people. We got all the 3 prostitutes that saw the shooting that went down between Huey and Officer Frye, and Officer Frye got killed because Huey was being put on trial for murder. And we got them sisters to join the Black Panther Party to stop prostituting. You know, come into the party, put them in the house. You know, I'm just saying, when we got through with that case, it came down that Huey was found not guilty of 1st-degree murder, found not guilty of 2nd-degree murder, and found guilty only of 3rd-degree voluntary manslaughter. Then appealed it to the higher California courts. It never even hit the Supreme Court. Just the California courts. And got it overturned. And then Huey went back to trial 3 times after that with hung juries, and finally the statute of limitations ran out, and the man's out of jail. So if we could just get another fair trial, even if we came up with a 3rd-degree voluntary manslaughter from Mumia Abu-Jamal, he's been in jail so long, boom, he'd have to be released. You heard a year and a half or so ago that brother Geronimo Pratt, Elmer Geronimo Pratt, former Vietnam decorated soldier, was a member of the Black Panther Party in the Los Angeles chapter. He became the Deputy Minister of Defense after Alprenus Bunchy Carter was killed. Alprenus Bunchy Carter and John Huggins were killed at UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles there, which is a whole other thing, connected with COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program of the FBI, who was really, we have proven now, behind the killing of Bunchy Carter and John Huggins. We can prove this through the counterintelligence program's own documents. We can prove this. But Elmer Geronimo Pratt was set up by Julius Julio Butler, who was working for the FBI, who was an informer, provocateur agent working inside the Black Panther Party. He got up on the stand in the 1970 trial of Elmer Geronimo Pratt and lied to the jury and said, no, I've never worked for the FBI, no, I've never been an informer for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When Johnny Cochran, back in those days in 1970, cross-examined the man, he says, no, 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 no. But Wesley Swearingen, a former FBI agent, who finally got out of the FBI after Fred Hampton was killed because he knew the FBI was complicit in the murder of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark in Chicago, December 4th, 1969. Wesley Swearingen retired, came to our lawyer, Charles Garrett, and began to reveal all the secrets. Former white FBI agent, white Anglo-Saxon FBI agent, who says, wait a minute, I know the FBI is complicit in the murder of John Huggins and Bunchy Carter at UCLA. He said, that upset me. He said, but at the end of the year, December 4th, 1969, when they killed Fred Hampton, he said, I wouldn't take this anymore. He wrote his own book called FBI Secrets by Wesley Swearingen, former FBI agent. He documents and shows this complicity. He further began to later work with the lawyers in the last 10, 11 years. The lawyers working for Elmer Geronimo Pratt. He was the one, that former FBI agent, who showed the lawyers how to request documents. When you make a request for Freedom of Information Act documents, and you list all the categories, areas, office where these documents may have come from or may be located, they're supposed to, under the Freedom of Information Act, go get those documents, give you copies, and send them to you. In many cases, what they'll do, they'll strike out the name, they'll black out the name of any provocateur agent that's working for the FBI. And you'll get a reading page, and then half the page is blocked out. You go on a reading page, and then another half of the page, a third of the page is blocked out. What they're doing is block out the name or any reference that may lead you to think that a certain person in our organization was probably working for the FBI. What Wesley did was this. He knew and remembered that many times when FBI had special documents that they wanted to hide, they would take those documents and take them way over somewhere in the U.S. government agricultural department. Take it over into the forestry department in their files and hide them. And so the lawyers began to request documents based on the necessity and need for exculpatory evidence and all this kind of stuff, and found documents showing that Julius Julio Butler was, in fact, an informant for the FBI, and further showed that the DA at the time of Elvin Geronimo Pratt's trial, in fact, knew this. And therefore, they did not allow discovery for Johnny Crocker to get the information so that you could Elvin Geronimo Pratt. That's why Elvin Geronimo Pratt was finally ruled to have a right to another trial. So I'm just saying they're complicated things, but these are the kind of things we need. Elmer Geronimo Pratt stuck to his guns. I gave interrogatories to the lawyers years ago that Elmer Geronimo Pratt was, in fact, December the 16th, up in Oakland, California. Why? I'm the chairman of the Black Panther Party. I used to call retreats all the time. Leadership body retreats of every chapter and every branch that may exist. I may get on the phone, I say, David, chief of staff, call all these chapters, you and John, my brother, call all these chapters and tell them I want to retreat up here such and such a week. They'll be up here 3, 4, 5 days. To do what? To teach them the demographics of how to set up a breakfast program, how to set up a preventative medical health care clinic, whatever, etc. That's why Elmer Geronimo Pratt was up in Oakland, California at the time the woman was killed. But I'm just saying, this is the kind of stuff that's made history that people don't know about. Let's fall back a little bit. Let's flip all the way back. How did we even get started with the Black Panther Party? Actually, the Black Panther Party was like a social, evolutionary accident. In other words, well, first let's take the word accident in the positive connotative meaning of it. But in other words, the Black Panther Party, we popped up right in the middle of an already ongoing, high-profile, high-protest profile movement of civil rights and anti-war in the United States. It was already high-profile, and we popped up right in the middle of it. We were like a social evolutionary accident. But there were still various kinds of reasons that motivated us to get where we got to. Now, in that movie Panther, that Melvin Van Peebles did, they treated us like we were some street toughs, some street tough gang members that just popped up and started doing some advocating and carrying some guns. I mean, it's no different from what the counterintelligence program used to do. It used to send out information that we were black militant hate groups, that we were murderers, that we were this, that we were that, etc. They never told you what we were really about. Plus, the movie Panther never told you what we were about. The movie Panther never mentions the fact that by the time we started the Black Panther Party, Huey P. Newton had already completed a year and a half in law school. They don't tell you that. That he was in fact in law school at the time we created the Black Panther Party. They don't tell you that. They don't tell you that Bobby Seale was employed by the city government of Oakland, California in the Department of Human Resources when we started the Black Panther Party. They don't tell you that we were college students. They're definitely not going to tell you that Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton was one of the most profound researchers and avid readers and researchers discovering and understanding the African history of the African American struggle. They're not going to tell you that. These movies, these documents, old newspapers, old establishment newspapers are not going to tell you I was raised a carpenter and a builder. that I was an architect by the time I was 18, that I was also a jazz drummer after I finished 4 years in the United States Air Force, that I was a stand-up comedian at one time, that I'm an expert barbecue cook. In fact, I have the only down-home hickory smoke Southern-style barbecue cookbook guide published in the United States of America. They never tell you that. They didn't tell you the boomings and the bugs. You got people running around today like David Horowitz writing his book depicting all the Black Panther Party, all 5,000 of my members as murderers, trying to support the right-wing, racist, conservative posture of what's going on from Senator Mott with his membership, membership in an ex-organization that changed its name from the old White Citizens Council, the old White Citizens Council in the 1960s, who used to denounce and do all kind of dirty trick, racist things against the civil rights movement in the 60s. What I'm trying to say, brothers and sisters, look here. That was a hellified piece of history that I had 5,000 members in. The majority, 2/3 or more, of my full-time active membership in the Black Panther Party at its peak membership was sisters. Y'all don't even know that, do you? Black women, young black women. See, we hear about Bobby Seale, Huey Newton, and Eldridge Cleveland, but y'all don't know about Sister Andrea Jones, who ran the whole Massachusetts State chapter of the Black Panther Party. Y'all don't know, some of you may have heard about Sister Angela Davis. You may have heard about Erica Huggins, but you don't know about Lynn French, who was the top organizer out of the Illinois State chapter of the Black Panther Party. Or Kathleen Cleaver, who was also... See, there are other people who were in this leadership position, and remember we had multiple leadership in the Black Panther Party. But I'm just saying that was a profound piece of history for us to evolve to a point where we captured the imagination of America, where we put up free breakfast for children programs all across this country in all 45 chapters, and in some cases there were no chapters and branches in some cities, to a point that we were feeding, by the beginning of 1969, 250,000 kids. We were feeding them breakfast 5 days a week before they went to school. As an organizing methodology, teach and show the people in the community the methodology, or at least using those programs to get young people and old people to understand where it was coming from. We started our Black Panther Party newspaper. I got some prints out here we're going to have at the reception here of the covers of the old Black Panther Party newspaper. We started out with a mimeograph sheet that I laid out. I'm the one who laid out that first mimeograph sheet in that warm poverty office when I worked for the city government of Oakland, California. I'm just saying, to a point where we were circulating 250,000 every week on time. And all those young Black Panther Party members is the one who got that newspaper out, who laid it out, who wrote it out, etc. Then we put up 28 free preventative medical health care clinics in this country, starting off with the support of the Northern California Association of Black Doctors. Dr. Carlton Goodley, who was the medical doctor of my lawyer, Charles Gary, the Black Panther Party lawyers, Charles Gary. What happened here? I'm just saying, we peaked out. And then we broadened all the coalition politics with all the white, left, radical, progressive organizations, all the young Latino, Native American, and Puerto Rican brothers and sisters, even the young patriots. Who were the young patriots? This is what pisses me. When I hear crap, historically, people still believe in crap. The young patriots were young, poor, and low-income whites and kids, youth, coming out of, 15, 20, 30 years of age, 20-some-odd years of age, who were coming out of the Appalachian Mountains where their mothers and fathers lived in mining with black lung, etc., who were trying to organize in Cleveland, who were trying to organize in Chicago about poor and low-income white folks, but they had enough progressiveness about them to say, you know what the Black Panthers is talking about, and all the poverty they're talking about, even though we didn't suffer no slavery, we suffer the same thing now. We need to talk to them. The young patriots, young poor whites, we sit down and we start rapping. And the next thing you know, we had a working face-to-face coalition, but people say we hated white folks. They tell you that to this day. I heard people around this school here, they got so much false information in their head. Oh, you gonna bring Bobby Seale here? Is he gonna come here with an entourage? Are they gonna have guns? My God, I come here by myself and drive here by myself. I don't even like bodyguards anymore. In the old days, I needed bodyguards. Because we told our races and we didn't give a damn it was a black dude supporting a bunch of races. You come down shooting at us, trying to stop us from exercising exercising our constitutional democratic civil human rights as it's written in the law, then we're going to defend ourselves. What do you mean by that? We're going to defend our constitutional democratic civil human rights to raise the country and organize our people in the community. You know, even people like Agnew, I'll never forget him. Agnew was the vice president under Nixon, who was later convicted of some kind of scheme of ripping off some money. The vice president of the United States did that. Got up on national television before he was kicked out. The Black Panthers are working outside the system. The Black Panthers are this. All of them following whose lead? J. Edgar Hoover, then head of the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover ran from city to city to city to city. He sent his FBI personnel and people there to get the mayors and get the politicians to rev up their police forces more than what they were, to design and set up operations to attack and shoot and kill the Black Panther Party members. Well, why would they just come and shoot and kill us? And particularly in the year 1969. You haven't read the history of the Black Panther Party. Even when we were patrolling police with guns, law books, and tape recorders in the early days, we always had a policy that if the police officer says you're under arrest, take the arrest. We weren't scared of anybody's courtroom. We loved the idea of going, you said, oh, we're going to arrest you and we're going to put you on trial in court. Here, we'll take the arrest. Why? Because the courtroom is a forum. The courtroom is a place to articulate why you arrested me in the first place. Read the real history of the Black Panther Party. We were never arrested for having illegal guns. Why didn't we have any illegal guns? We were never arrested for those charges. Of all those years, from 1967 to 1971, Black Panther Party members in the hundreds, almost 1,000 or more, on the average, were arrested and originally were charged with felony charges that added up in a 5 or 6 year period to 2,000 felony charges. Now, listen to me, brothers and sisters. 90% of all those arrests were harassment-type arrests. One, to get all the fingerprints of every Black Panther Party member existing. Two, you see what I'm getting at? This is what it was. They would immediately drop the charges 1, 2, or 3 days. At one point, they was trying to deplete our bail funds, because we had a bail fund. And you weren't me in the Black Panther Party. I would make your feet hit the ground. You wasn't going to sit up in no jail unless you was charged with a no bail offense. Make your feet hit the ground to drain our bail fund. Only 10% of all those charges ever went to court. Now, of all those that went to court, did you know, in fact, we won 95% of all the cases? Brothers and sisters, no, they're not going to tell you that. Because we had one of the best legal defense team networks set up in this country, from New York to Frisco, from Atlanta, Georgia, to Los Angeles, to Chicago, and back again. That's why we won 95% of them. We also won 95% of them because there's certain things you don't know about the history. People like Roy Wilkins of the NAACP moved over and donated more than $250,000 to our legal defense fund. People like Hannah Weinstein, a lot of young Jewish kids and white Anglo-Saxon kids, and got a hold of their friends and got a hold of their mamas, got them to sit down, got them to take a time to look at what the Black Panther Party is. And yes, they donated several $1 million over several years for our political prisoners, for all our cases, all across the United States of America. Yes, that's exactly right. Sometimes we go to Hollywood, go to one of them big parties and gigs. But you know, a lot of white folks says, well, I'm having Black Panthers over. Are you coming over? Crowded house. You know, it was chic sometimes, but it wasn't chic to us. We was in trouble, and we wasn't there for no bullshit. I tell them, I said, look, I said, y'all think it's nice to have some Black Panthers over, but we dying in the streets. Now, if you want to help us out, we got political prisoners all over this country. We got preventative medical health care clinics. We got free breakfast. Now, if you don't believe we got them, fly up to Oakland, go down to Los Angeles, and look at the real programs. All them people really went down there and said, damn, this is real. A real free health clinic with real doctors who come in and donate their time, with real medics, et cetera, and so on. This is what was happening. We raised that money. People don't know today that Sammy Davis Jr. donated in pieces over $60,000 to the Black Panther Party. People don't know that people like Ossie Davis over a period of time, must have raised and also personally donated probably half of it, $200,000, him and Ruby D. You don't know these things about Richard Pryor and a lot of other people. A lot of other good brothers and sisters who had money and stuff, who came to our organization, who sit down and checked it out. But how did all that get started? Me, I was a young engineering design major in Merritt College up in California. See, the power structure's not going to tell you that I was a young engineering design major. Power structure's not going to tell you that before I even got involved in social change protests, I was a college student taking 9 credit hours in the day and working a full-time job at night for over 2 years. Where was I working? I'm not going to tell you I worked in the Gemini Missile Program. I'm not going to tell you I worked in the engineering department of Kaiser Aerospace and Electronics. They're not going to tell you that I did electromagnetic field black light non-destruct inspection for all engine frames for the Gemini missile when it was popping satellites up there. They're not going to tell you I did non-destruct testing for all 3 stages of exhaust housing for the Gemini missile program, that I had placed myself in the high-tech world where I wanted to be, having been raised a carpenter and architect by the time I was 18, 4 years in the United States Air Force on structural repair, high-performance aircraft, then the Gemini missile program, stand-up comedian, drummer, etc., and stage actor. They ain't gonna tell you that. They told you I was a hoodlum. I'm not a hoodlum. I'm a whole human being. And I love the idea of being raised a carpenter and a fisherman. I love the idea of learning how to shoot a high-powered rifle, a 30-30 Winchester that my father bought me when he used to take me hunting up in Northern California, hunting deer, hunting bear, etc. I was lucky to have a father and a whole house to get all these trades and skills, carpentry, building, etc. I was very lucky. But I was also sensitive to some things. I was made sensitive. Because as I walked out one day, spring semester, 1962, in front of Merritt College, near the barn where the auditorium is, I lived 2 blocks this way across the street from Merritt College. But I was walking out that spring semester, across this big broad street in front of Joe Ethel's Cafe and next door to another private-owned bookstore. There was a street corner rally going on. Now remember, I'm a 26-year-old man at this time. And somebody was over there saying, the Afro-American Association has come here today to tell it like it is. I said, what the heck is the Afro-American Association? I ain't never heard the phrase Afro-American. See, because I was raised up what we refer to ourselves as Negroes, Negro-Americans, colored, and also colored people, C-U-L-L-U-D, colored. My point is this here, brothers and sisters. What I'm saying here is that was a young period. I mean, I'm a student. I don't know what it is to get less than an A in mathematics. I love mathematics. I've always loved good science. I don't know what it is to get less than an A in any engineering design project. Even when I was in high school, in architecture, mechanical drawing, mechanical design, 3-dimensional auxiliary views, I don't know what it is to get less than an A. So I love the high-tech world. That was me. But in 1962, when I heard these guys talking about the African, I knew nothing about my African-American people's history of struggle. I knew nothing. I mean, I thought Tarzan ran Africa. That's how brainwashed I was. We were raised off of those movies. Tarzan, you know what I mean? The Great White Hunter, Moana. I mean, it was some B, C, and G-rated movies that was flooded. And they didn't just brainwash the black folks, they brainwashed the white folks too. They brainwashed everybody erroneously about African and African people to distort what we were about as whole human beings. And these guys talking about the Afro-American Association. So I walked across the street, 40, 50 people standing there listening. And they had several different speakers. And one of them I noticed, I said, that's William Brumfield. I know him. I haven't seen him since I was 16. I'm 26 now, 10 years later. I mean, William Brumfield had been the older brother of my personal friend, Steve Brumfield, his younger brother. And so when the thing got quiet, I said, hey, William, I said, how you doing? How you doing, Bobby, et cetera, boom, 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 boom. We talked about his brother and how bad he was that he died, et cetera, and so on. I said, so William, what is this here Afro-American stuff about? A bunch of communist stuff or something? Afro, what you talking about? He says, Bobby, of all people. I said, what are you talking about, man? So he played on me. He did something that he knew I knew about when I was 16 and 17 years old, when his brother Steve and I had identified with Native Americans. William says to me at age 26 in front of the Merritt College, he said, who are the Sioux, Bobby? I said, their name is not the Sioux, their name is the Lakota. I said, the word Sioux is a French word. The word Sioux, I said, look it up in the dictionary. The etymology of it states this French word means cutthroat. It has nothing to do with the real true history of the Native Americans. Well, then I said American Indians, the so-called Sioux. They're the Lakota, and they really named the Lakota Nation. He says, so, Bobby, if we're saying we're not colored, we're not Negroes, that we have a real African descendancy, he says, then how can a Spanish word have anything to do, Spanish word Negro, have anything to do with the real reference of what we are as a whole people? I said, oh, I see what you're talking about, man. Yeah. I said, okay. Anyway, I talked to him, and I asked him, I said, well, Steve, I got to go to work tonight, man. I said, but, I told William, I said, a good book. He said, you can get it in the bookstore. I walked in the bookstore, and I picked up this book he recommended. Jomo Kenyatta. The title of the book, it was by Jomo Kenyatta. The title of the book was called Facing Mount Kenya. I took the book to work with me. And in between inspecting engine frames and stuff, I'd sit down at my desk and read this book. It blew my mind. Jomo Kenyatta was a young black man who left the eastern African country of Kenya, went to England, got him 1 degree, came to America, got another degree, went back, organized his people out from under the yoke of English colonialism dominating the African peoples. It blew my mind. Tarzan doesn't run Africa. Wow. Wait a minute. Next thing I know, the next 2-3 days, I'm trying to find everything I can on Africa, then I'm trying to find everything I can on Black American history, but to discover that there were great kingdoms, the Songhai and Mali and the Ghana kingdoms, the great economic trading routes that set up in Western Africa. This stuff blew my mind. Here I am, an A student in mathematics, top in architecture, down placed in the high-tech world of the Gemini Missile program, where I wanted to be, but I knew nothing, and now I was learning something suddenly about my African-American people's involvement as human beings on this earth. I began to take anthropology courses, all kind of extracurricular courses, etc. But my whole point is, that's where I was at. Next thing I know, I'm reading W.B. Du Bois' Black Reconstruction. Then I'm reading Marvel J. Herskovitz' Mr. Negro Past. Then I'm reading Basil Davis's The Slave Trade. And then, the great literary writers that were popping in my head, then James Baldwin and some of the others, Richard Wright and so on. Stuff was blowing my mind. I picked up Herbert Apthacker's work. Herbert Apthacker documented 250 slave revolts from the year 1800 to year 1857. 250 slave revolts? You mean we had that many slave revolts in the history of slavery? You mean we didn't sit down on our booties? I went to Berkeley High School in Berkeley, California, considered one of the top-rated public schools in the United States of America. They had taught me at age 15, when I was sitting in there, why black folks love slavery. Black folks in slavery would sit on a stoop and just play a banjo. That's what the crap they taught me. That Africa was dark as Africa. The movies, the old B-rated movies. I remember them so well. We'd be as kids in there going to see the great white hunter Moana and see Tarzan. Tarzan, some half-naked white dude. Tarzan could rap to a whole herd of elephants, rap to them and talk to them. Tell them elephants to go over there and kick that adversary's booty. And then they would portray the Africans in the movie. Oh, Tarzan, like they're docile and absurd. Tarzan didn't run after. This new revelation, 1962, 1963, moving into 1964. I must have digested 100 books, works. By 64, I've got subscriptions going to 20, 25 different subscriptions, including Liberator Magazine, Freedomways, and others. I'm putting scrutiny to every protest aspect. I went to see Martin Luther King speak in the fall of 1962, because I started off researching in the spring of 1962. Martin Luther King came to Oakland, California, at the Oakland Auditorium. 7,000 seats, packed the joint. It was overbrimmed. People were sitting in the aisle. And I'm one guy sitting up in the audience to hear Brother Martin Luther King rap. Brothers and sisters, and we're going to boycott Woolworth if they want to hire black folks. We got to boycott Cresses and the 5 and dime stores and some of that. We got to boycott these bread companies. The bread companies are supposed to feed and nourish us. Wonder Bread Company ain't hiring no black folks. If Wonder Bread Company don't want to hire no black folks, they say we're going to have to boycott them and make Wonder Bread wonder where the money is. That's right. Martin Luther King, I'm telling you, really truly inspired me. He was my first inspiration to go hear him speak. Next thing I know, I'm going to hear Malcolm X speak the next year. Simultaneously, in that year, in '63, I'm learning about the 1962 Sharpeville massacre in South Africa. This is what I'm learning about. I'm hearing about a brother named Nelson Mandela, the African National Congress over there, who's been put in prison. They get ready to sentence him, and they did sentence him. My first protest, carrying a placard in 1963, first time I ever protested and marched in something, was in front of the South African Consulate. That's the South African Consulate. It's an extension of the United Nations, set up in San Francisco, California, across the bay in Oakland where I live. We're there, free, stop apartheid, free Nelson Mandela. And I must have got 5,000 people over a period of time then, signing signatures on petitions that we, connected with various different organization groups, submitted those petitions to the United Nations for the freedom of Nelson Mandela and to end apartheid in South Africa. This is what was happening to me as a young man, as a young engineer and design major, as a young man in the high-tech world. That's where I was. I got enamored with it all. It was too much to read W.E.B. Du Bois and find out how, 300,000 blacks in the borderline states in particular during the Civil War in the United States of America, the Civil War in 1860 to 1865, 300,000 blacks injected themselves into the war. How after the Emancipation Proclamation, 168,000 black men was enlisted into the Northern Union Army. 38,000 died, and they was the key to why the North won the war in the first place. It's all documented, brothers and sisters. I'm not just rapping off something. This is well, look, you can go to Channel 12 now. The other night they had Africans in America. They tell you this. Well, I was trying to get this kind of history out back then. I got Black American history in Merritt College campus. This was the early days. To get that information, to research. I mean, Merritt College didn't even have these books, but I was only 10 blocks from the University of California at Berkeley. I grew up around the University of California at Berkeley, the place where nuclear physics, Einstein and others developed all that stuff, the Launch Radiation Laboratory connected with. I found out the University of California, Berkeley had 26 different libraries. And in some cases, they had separate anthropology libraries, separate psychology libraries, separate sociology, cross-index, of course. I could find at the University of California anything in the world that was printed. Whoa, what? Here? I found up a footnote one time on Marwell J. Herscovitz's work. Marwell J. Herskovitz wrote the work, Myth of the Negro Past, a profoundly, very factual, very well documented, dissertative piece of work concerning all the insidious myths that hang around the history and the meaning of black folks. I was following up a footnote. He had made reference to a Dr. Lorenzo Dow Turner, a black American PhD in English, who in fact had published a book in 1949. I mean, this is 1963 when I'm following this footnote up. This book in 1949 had involved 12 years of field research. So Dr. Lorenzo Dow Turner had started this particular field research in 1938. I was only being born in 1936. Here's a book that being written about surviving Africanisms and black language. Now, why I love the high-tech world and why I still love and respect the need for standard English, at the same time that I love the high-tech world, I spoke with a certain black English dialect. I tend to say dis, dat, dim, yo, mo, flow. And if you don't know what those words mean, this, that, them, your, more, and floor. In other words, in the black community, I remember this mama used to call Jimmy Lee up. Hang her head out the window. Jimmy Lee, boy, get your butt in this house. Get in that door. Get inside that door. Go down there, get inside the door. Now shut that door. And clean this mess up off this floor. Now, I didn't pay any attention to it until I got old and I found out about Dr. Lorenzo Dow Turner's work to research African American survivalism in African American language. What Dr. Lorenzo Dow Turner had proved in his 12 years field research that in the West African languages where most African and African American people were extracted from, there were no T-H-E-R-A-R rolling R sounds in any of the languages. It didn't mean that we were inferior. At the same time, we had base tonal sounds somewhat that could change the meaning of the word, and Europeans had no tonal sound in their language. As for, you say Asian people have a lot of tone change and sounds that can change meanings of words. So it's not about anybody being inferior to anybody, it just happened not to be any T-H-E-R-A-R rolling R sound. That there was grammatical syntax and structure, etc. But more importantly, that's what kicked me. Why did I say just that damn yomo and fo? There were no T-H-E-R-A-R rolling R sounds in the West African language in the first place. Wow! The teacher, when I was in the 3rd grade, used to hit me on the knuckles. The black and the white teacher, because they didn't know no better. When I sit up and read a Dick, Jane, and Spot primer reader, Dick and Jane came in the door. I did not say the with the TH sound, door with the R sound. He says, boom, and hit me on the knuckles and says, you're speaking pidgin language. Stop speaking pidgin language. Well, these teachers are making me feel inferior, right? Because I have a certain enunciation. You see what I'm getting at? I'm not saying this to denounce white people. That's not my point. I'm saying this to say something. Those of you who may be in education, especially when you're going to teach people in various ethnic groups and you come from a standard English strict framework, have to understand what that language background is so you won't run around making children feel inferior. I'm just saying, though, that was part of my research of that 1960s history, that African American history, that cultural meaning, that ethnicity, not race. I'm not concerned with trying to prove race. It cannot be proved biologically. It's a fact. The research science now, DNA biomolecular science, has now proved that nobody is superior to no damn body. I mean, let's wait a minute, brothers and sisters, let me show you something. Let's research and go back to it. There's a particular piece of work I was reading about in Time magazine. I picked up some information on the work. It's been published. It dealt with over 50 years, and I read this 4.5 years ago, 50 years of blood samples being taken and frozen from every ethnic and sub-ethnic group throughout the world over a 50-year period. By the end of the 1980s, when DNA biomolecular science, which is all about mapping the whole genome, genetic structure of human existence, with this biological, biomolecular science, with all these blood samples of all these human beings representing all these various, whether it's European, Asian, Africanoid, or whoever, Australoid, and all the sub-related groups to them, blood samples to these ethnic groups in various cultures, etc. This biological science proves this. All the differences that we observe on the surface, complexion, so you're black, white, brown, blue, red, green, yellow, polka dot, and there are some polka dot people, you know, got freckles in their face like polka dot. My point though, hair texture differences, stature, height, tall, short, etc. Even the differences between male and female's reproductive organs. If you put all the differences together, all the differences in hair, complexion, stature, male, female, reproductive organ, all the differences pulled together, all of those differences amount to less than 2% based on DNA biomolecular science. These things are surface. Sure, we can trace, and by the genetic structure show whether a person is Africanoid, or Mongoloid, or Caucasoid, or Caucasian, or whatever. My point becomes irrelevant. One of the reasons I'm speaking here tonight, I know some of the history I got to cover in the 60s, but I want you to understand something, brothers and sisters. What we did in the Black Panther Party, with our slogan, all power to all the people. In other words, our real enemy was the corporate money rich and other avaricious lackeys, as we used to put it, who support the avaricious pig politicians, as we used to put it, who control the political, economic, and social justice institutions that affect our lives. That power needs to re-evolve itself step by step back into the hands of the masses of the people, including African and African American peoples, Native American, whoever, even down to poor white folks. Even poor white folks who still may be racist in their head. They need some community control too. But if we evolve this kind of new economic practice, depending on how creative you as youth get with this, then we are hopefully evolving something that makes human sense. Because with the past racism up to the present, exploitation, excessive forms of exploitation, etc., murder, terror, etc., bombing, killing, etc., boom, 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 boom. That's inhuman. So it's about evolving and re-evolving and going to the future to get something that makes human sense, economic practice that makes human sense. I thought, when I was reading about 3 or 4 years ago, that this population growth was going to hit 6 billion probably around 2000, 2001. They're saying it's hitting it already. 6 billion living human beings on the face of this earth. Stratifying all of these said ethnic and cultural groups of human beings, Homo sapiens human beings. We're talking a low of 10 billion by 2040. Now, something is being dictated to us when we take time to pay attention to the reality of where humanity is going. The first thing is this. I can rap to you all about the 60s I want to, but I don't live in the 60s. I know the 60s. I know the 60s back and forth, sideways, and catacomb, especially as it related to the history of the Black Panther Party and the coalition politics, courtroom trials, cussing judges out in the courtroom to demand my constitutional right. I can rap and rap and rap and rap and inspire you. But it's about going for the future. Brothers and sisters, black, white, blue, red, green, yellow, polka dot. All power to all the people. We're going to learn to respect. It's about evolving decent human relationships between human beings. In the 1960s, those vicious murderers were up before I came on the scene, were killing and murdering peaceful demonstrators, me and Huey said. That's what they were doing, brothers and sisters. The Bull Corners, the George Wallace is standing up talking about segregation forever. I mean, this is what was going on. They were not just killing black folks, and the young whites who came out to protest, they got up and stood up to protest racism in America. They started killing them too. And I said, damn, if they're killing their own white kids, you know they don't give a damn about us black folks down here in the bottom of the black community. So we decided we were going to patrol these police as a tactic to capture the imagination of the black community. But how did we come about that? Well, let me say this here right quick to show you how the Black Panther Party really started. Malcolm X died. I was pissed. I just broke up from RAM, the Revolutionary Action Movement, because they were two armchair revolutionaries. For a year and a half, sit down and talk about revolution and never organize nothing. You know, you sit in an armchair, through a process, you liberate Africa, you liberate Black America, you liberate Native America, you liberate everybody. About a year and a half later, all they did was talk about it. Ain't nobody liberated yet. And ain't one thing been organized, so I got tired of it. Quit them. Malcolm X was killed. I hadn't seen Huey around American campus for a while, and I did not know exactly where he lived, but I'd always seen Huey around American campus. And I said, Huey, I'm gonna get Huey to help me. They killed Brother Malcolm, I'm gonna start another organization. A week later, I found out from a Japanese friend, Richard Aoki, where Huey lived. Richard Aoki went to high school with Huey. And I found where Huey lived, and I had a copy of Francis Malone's Wretched of the Earth with me. I said, Huey, man, we got to start another organization because they didn't kill Malcolm X. Huey was probably, didn't believe we could probably do it. He really wanted to finish law school because he just entered. Anyway, Huey told me, he says, you know what, man, he said, I think if black people knew more about their African American history, their black history, maybe we'd have a chance of organizing something relevant. And I said, you know what, Hugh, I thought I'm going to put Black History on American campus. And sure the heck I did. I went and organized a group called the Black History Fact Group, right out of American campus students, half female, half male. And we started doing all the research that I'd already done and pulled it together. We wrote 4 extensive syllabus outlines for 4 different courses.